I hate to run. I don't just dislike it, I actually hate it. But in February of 2013, I was called to run the most important race of my life. After 2 months of questions, concerns, doctor visits, blood work, and biopsies, I was diagnosed with metastatic stage 4 nasopharyngeal cancer. It had shown up without a warning behind my nose and throat. No pain, no symptoms, no elevated numbers or cancer markers, only what appeared to be a harmless lump in my neck. With a rare 1 in a million diagnosis, the next part of my life was upside down. I had always told my husband I was 1 in a million, so there's that. But it wasn't long into my intense chemotherapy and daily radiation treatments under a white plastic mask that I, a speech-language pathologist who specializes in swallowing disorders, could no longer swallow. I couldn't eat, I could hardly talk. Because of radiation burns that had quickly taken over my mouth, throat, and esophagus, my suddenly weakened body soon relied on a feeding tube to stay alive. I was weak, malnourished, on high doses of heavy-duty pain medication, and fighting for my life. Living in the small mountain town of Flagstaff since childhood, I've always enjoyed being active and involved in school functions, sports, and community activities. My cancer happened to show up during a very busy sports season. Baseball for our 3 boys and gymnastics for our daughter. With kids ages 17, 13, 10, and 7 at the time, I still desperately wanted to be the best wife and mom I could. But I just couldn't. I couldn't do the thing that I love to do the most, which is take care of my family. Suddenly, I needed help with nearly everything. As the side effects of my treatment continued and the multiple trips back and forth from Flagstaff to Phoenix took their toll, I was no longer able to plan and prepare meals. I couldn't clean my house or do laundry. I couldn't go to many of my kids' games or pick them up from practice. I couldn't help them with homework, and I couldn't plan their fun birthday parties. There were many times I couldn't even stay awake. I had to let others help and do almost everything for me, and that was especially hard for this hands-on mom. But my family, friends, and community selflessly ran this race alongside me and often carried me when I could no longer run or walk on my own. To keep my sanity and to help me see the light at the end of the tunnel, I had made myself a radiation countdown shirt with numbers written on the back. This was an amazing help to me as I was crawling toward my finish line. While in treatment, I met an older gentleman who was on a similar radiation schedule to mine. He must have been in his 80s. He and his sweet wife were often in the waiting room with us, and we quickly became friends. It wasn't long before my new radiation buddy commented on the shirt, so I made one for him. Mine was lime green, and his was a very neon orange. We wore those brightly colored shirts to every remaining appointment and took turns crossing off the numbers on the back with a black Sharpie. We celebrated together when we completed that brutal head and neck radiation schedule, and we cried together when we rang the bell. After 7 long weeks under those scary masks, we both knew the magnitude of the finish line we had just crossed, and we rejoiced together. A second act was born from that idea. I have created an official countdown shirt for radiation and chemo patients. It will be available to them along with a Sharpie marker at the start of their treatment. They too can cross off those final treatment days, keeping their eyes on the finish line. But another second act was still to come. This arduous race forced me to look into the eyes of my own mortality. The side effects of treatment were aggressive. The changes came so fast and with a vengeance. But by God's grace and in His strength, I am here today. I have been cancer-free for 7 years, and I vividly remember the day I heard those precious words, "You are cancer-free." It was in that moment, in a quiet patient room at the Mayo Clinic, after a long day of scans, tests, and blood work, that I knew in my heart I was supposed to write my story. A story of real, a story of fear, a story of pain, and a story of hard. A story of strength that was not my own in a race with an unknown finish line. My book, Strength to Run, Hope and Strength in the Race of Suffering, became the other part of my second act. It took 2 long years to put on paper, and I didn't know who would read it, or if anyone would read it for that matter. I didn't know how deeply this book would touch some of its readers, and I didn't know it would give strength to people dealing with challenging events in their lives, not just cancer. I didn't know that nursing and medical professors would use it to help their students better understand the cancer patient's perspective. I didn't know a friend would seek out my book and be strengthened by what she read just 2 weeks prior to her own cancer diagnosis. But I was certain of one thing, that this book would be used for a purpose much bigger than mine. My story has also given me speaking opportunities at cancer support groups, college classes, and women's events. I am humbled and encouraged to see how God continues to use my words, and I eagerly look forward to what's next. This race against cancer has changed my life. It has opened blind eyes. It has softened my heart. It has broadened my understanding of suffering and is helping me to see others' needs in a completely different way. It has given me a new depth of compassion for others, especially those who are suffering alone. I now understand the silence and the loneliness that illness and suffering can bring. My battle against cancer has given me yet one more second act platform. As a speech-language pathologist, I can now offer compassion and hope in a completely different way than I could before. Many of my patients are also cancer survivors. Some have swallowing disorders, are unable to eat, or are on a feeding tube like I was. And I am now better equipped to truly help them. Acting sometimes almost as a patient advocate, I can help inform and support patients as they learn to navigate their particular journey because I have been there. I can educate families, nurses, and doctors from a patient perspective, and I can help patients explore their resources. Most importantly, I am better able to listen to and encourage them in whatever race they are running. I represent hope. This race has taught me that sometimes what we think is our biggest problem or setback can turn into God's greatest opportunity to draw us closer to Him and to be used in ways we least expect. I have learned that pain, difficulties, and suffering are never wasted, and our faith often grows when things get hard. I know mine has. It is my hope that the second act of my very imperfect story can continue to offer hope and inspiration. But most importantly, I want to keep running this race called life in the best, most purposeful, God-honoring way I can.